Today I'll be sharing 7 fatal mistakes that product managers make in their interview. And it costs them millions of dollars in their career. Bring a pen and paper, listen carefully, take notes, and especially watch out for number 6 because most people are making these mistakes and they don't even know it. Hey, my name is Shobhit Chugh and I'm CEO and founder of Intentional Product Manager, which is probably the world's leading product management career coaching service. Now, I've also been a product manager at Google. I've probably interviewed 200 product managers over there, and I know exactly what are the kinds of mistakes product managers make. I'm someone worth listening to, so keep watching. Mistake number 1. You might think this is what you need to do, but it's not. And that mistake is telling your life story when somebody says, "Why don't you tell me about yourself?" Or "Why don't you walk me through your resume?" I've had people talk for 15 minutes about themselves. And you know what my reaction was? When the F is this person going to really shut up? Why are they going to stop talking so we can actually proceed with the interview? See, the tell me about yourself question is not really tell me about yourself. It's tell me exactly what in your background makes you a great fit for this particular role. Let me repeat. It's exactly what in your background makes you a great fit for this particular role. So everything you need to do needs to be tailored to that 1-2 minutes at max where people can listen to you and they'll be like, "I see why they're such a good fit. Let me ask them more questions." Your interviewer needs to be excited. And at the same time, you can't sound like a robot. You can't sound like someone they're not going to work with. So you're trying to get this delicate balance of sell, but at the same time be relatable. You want to be the perfect candidate, and at the same time you want to be, hey, this is a friendly person who I want to work with, and I want them on my team, and I want them to be doing really well. So that's mistake number 1. Telling the life story and tell me about yourself and misunderstanding the question that is being asked over there. Mistake number 2, treating the interview as a Q&A session or a question and answer session rather than a conversation. You have the power to shape what happens in the interview. Let me repeat that. You have the power to shape what happens in the interview. In fact, that's one of the fundamental things we teach is how do you steer your interview towards the right direction rather than how do you just answer the questions the best as they are asked. Here's the deal. Most product managers who are doing well working with us, they treat the interview as a politician. What does that mean? Well, politicians, they tend to have a few points that they want to repeat over and over again. You know, a common thing that they try to do is they try to change the question. Rather than just answer what's been asked, they're like, "Oh, what's more important than that is X." And then they go and answer that. Now, we don't want you to be that sneaky, sleazy politician. We want you to be a lot more subtle. But we want you to constantly be reshaping that interview towards what you bring to the table, what's really most important from your background that they should know, or your skills that they should know. And so treat it as a conversation. Treat the interviewer as someone who's imperfect. They don't have all the answers. In fact, they're probably a little nervous going into this conversation, right? You might think they're not. They're like perfectly this, but I used to get a little nervous at Google, even when I was interviewing, and especially in my early interviews, because I don't want them to have a negative impression of Google. I didn't want someone to be like, "I've always admired this company, but I interviewed with this ass named Shobhit." And I'm like, if they would take Shobhit, they would take anyone. So why bother? I was afraid of that happening. And you might think that's just stupid, but hey, human psychology it's not always you're in this position, so you must be that. So the interviewer itself might be unsure and nervous on how to evaluate you, and you are helping them by shaping the conversation in the right direction. Know this also. If you succeed in that interview, right? If you do well and they don't need to interview anybody else for that role, that's a huge plus for them. Because most of the time the interviewers, they don't have a strong incentive to interview. It's sort of like they have to do it as part of the job rather than something most people want to do. They would rather be done with the first candidate, they're a perfect fit, and just move on. So shape the conversation such that it leads to that logical conclusion that you are actually a great fit for that role. And don't treat it as a question and answer session. Mistake number 3, speaking at the wrong level. What do you mean at the wrong level? Well, let's take Google as an example, just because I understand that well. So, there's different levels of product managers. Level 4, 5, 6, 7, and it keeps going, but let's just take those as a reference. Level 4 is your typical, I've done some years of tech, I got my MBA, or I've had a few years of product management experience, so, you go in there. Level 5 is more experienced PMs. Level 6 is the senior most product managers who are individual contributors, and you can start managing people at this level. And then L7 is groups, so now you're managing product managers, a latest director. Do you think all of them, anybody can get at any level with the same answers? No, there is a completely different level of stories that you need to tell, of how you need to answer product design, product strategy questions at L7 versus L4. And I've seen people who are so accomplished come to our program. And I mean, an example is somebody who was like leading a team of 60 odd people, product managers, designers, data scientists, like they were more in a general manager, CPO sort of role. We first looked at their answers. I'm like, what, are you like a L4, what most people would consider a senior product manager? Is that what you are? Because that's what you come across with your current answers. And the fatal mistake was not answering at the right level and not emphasizing the skills you need to emphasize at that particular level. So as you become at a higher level, you need to be more strategic, showcase you've been more strategic, showcase you can tackle ambiguous problems, continue to showcase that you're very empathetic to your customers, showcase that now you can start to build teams of product managers, you know how to establish team culture, know how to coach people and get them moving in their career. Like all those things become extremely important. And so what's critical is you interview and you showcase skills at that particular level. That is fundamentally important. And a fatal mistake product managers make is they're just interviewing at completely the wrong level. Mistake number 4, asking the wrong questions. When it's time for you to ask questions, the interview is not over. I repeat, the interview is not over. The interview is still on. The quality of your questions and how you listen to those answers is basically where the interview is coming to an end. And there is this thing called the peak end rule, where people, they remember mostly the peak experiences of a particular experience. They remember the peak moments and they remember the end. So peak moments is like, when they were like, oh cool, like this was like something that they really caught on to. And it could be a peak in terms of positive emotion or negative emotion. And then they remember how it ended. And if you end weakly, basically you are doing a huge disservice to everything you've done until that point. So you need to ask strong questions that both cannot just be answered by looking on the website. Like if you ask a question like, how many vacations do you get, or like something like that, that's a waste of a question. Second, they also need to be questions that make the interviewer think that you are intelligent, but also puts them in a positive state of mind, because you don't want them to go into a negative state. So one of the big things we do is we give a list of questions and we train our clients on exactly what questions they must ask and how do they select questions at different levels so that they end the experience positively, and they also learn more about the company and they can start deciding, do they want to work there or just sounds like a bad place to work. If you're enjoying this video so far, I'm going to tell you, you must hit the subscribe and like button so that you just see more of these videos and you start to build in your progress in your career rather than just watching more cat videos. Mistake number 5, not making your answer specific to the question they asked. I've seen product managers build up a strong narrative and stories only to fail in telling it very specifically to the question that the interviewer has asked. And because they're not specific enough, the interviewer feels like you wanted to tell them something and you told them that, but you never really answered the question. So you gotta always bring it back. Like, did you answer that question? You're gonna check in, you're gonna make sure that was actually addressed and it just didn't go into a generality, a general story that you wanted to tell. Mistake number 6, big one you might be making, you don't even know. Focusing too much on content, not enough on delivery. What does that mean? Well, remember how I told you that often we work with product managers, we actually write out like what are the answers that they should be giving? That's not the end of the story. You cannot show up to an interview and seem like you've rehearsed everything and you focus so much on telling everything that the human factor is completely gotten out. Because they're hiring you to be a human working in that position, not just somebody who is like a list of skills and accomplishments. So people who do really well in interviews and avoid these fatal mistakes, they not just think through what they need to bring to the table, but then they deliver it. And they deliver it and they work on things like, when do they pause? When do they speak faster? When do they slow down? Like all those things, verbal communication, non-verbal communication, it's a skill that you can learn. I mean, I fundamentally, over time, I've changed my voice. Might sound weird, but there used to be a point where my voice was squeaky, very soft, and I would even find that if I spoke for a long time, my throat would start to hurt. Now, that might still happen when I'm recovering from COVID, as I am while I'm recording this video, but now I can, speak in a loud space and everything, and that's because I was fundamentally producing the voice wrong. So I hired voice coaches. Know that this is something you can change. You can literally change your voice, how you articulate everything. Your delivery needs to match the level at which you are headed. Which doesn't mean that everyone needs to be, like Elizabeth Holmes and starts to speak in this artificial voice that she used to when she became CEO of Theran or whatever that company was and later went to jail. You don't have to go to that level, but you can be the best version of yourself as far as the delivery is concerned. And you must work on that if you want to move faster in your career. And it's not being fake, because look, it's still just a version of you. Fatal mistake number 7, focusing everything on strategy, not enough on your psychology. I've literally had product managers who, had 3 consecutive mock interviews that they did with us, and they got a no hire rating. Like we were like, nah, you're not a good fit here. And we were like, what's happening? This person is so much more accomplished. We know they're more articulate. They can answer questions well. What exactly is happening? And the challenge was psychology. Their mental state by which they were entering was already nervous, anxious, and not even confident about themselves. We worked with specific techniques on this. And when we when we flipped the switch, what happened was that suddenly they went from no hire, which is like a lowest rating, all the way till higher, which is like the second highest rating you can get. So 4-point jump, and all to do with psychology, what they were thinking, how confidently they came into the interview. It just absolutely flipped. So not focusing on your psychology, only focusing on your content, your strategy, your delivery is probably the biggest mistake people make. And this is just a single most thing that makes people get to that next level. So these were the 7 fatal mistakes. Now, if you enjoyed learning about these, make sure you check out this video where I outline exactly what I would do if I was looking for a new product management job in this market.